And what set them apart very clearly from whatever I've read in your book is the speed at which China does things. And when you talk about countries, let's say like Vietnam or even India, being possible substitutes to China, I feel that's never going to be possible because some of the examples that you give where there is absolutely nothing one day, a landfill, but a guy tells the Apple executive that probably a few months down the line we will have a factory going there or some such.
Yeah, I mean, I'll start with a personal anecdote. When I was in China in 2016 or so, I remember being confused because I was sitting there with some such book like Lonely Planet, and I was right in front of a new high-speed rail line. But I couldn't find it on the map I was using. And the book had only been published the prior calendar year. Maybe it was 10 months ago, maybe it was 18 months ago. I don't know. But basically what I learned within a few minutes is that it had been built so quickly that the writers of Lonely Planet, even a year ago, weren't aware of it, and therefore so they didn't acknowledge it because it didn't exist. But here it was up and running, and I could get on the train. That's the kind of experience that Apple engineers were having in China all the time. I mean, one example that I don't use in the book was that you got this MD team operating in China, and I forget the specifics, but essentially we're talking about like the factory the size of a football field, and it's going to be like reworked, if you will, for Apple production, and it's just filled with machinery that they don't need, and they need to have different machinery come in. And so the team estimates that it'll take 3, maybe 4 weeks to sort of get it up and running to like Apple standards in terms of like the machinery being in place. And then they come to the factory the next day, it's all been done, right? And it's just completely inexplicable. So you have these 24/7 teams working crazy amounts of labor and just a hard workingness and an ethic of please the clients that I think other countries struggle to replicate. And so, this is why the book can be really interesting, because in order to tell those stories, you have to have the reader sort of understand that China's coming out of what they call their century of humiliation. And, that's sort of a pre-1949 thing when the communist power takes hold. There's a constitutional amendment that allows for private businesses, and it's very recent. And so when people who haven't had these opportunities suddenly have them, they're pretty happy to work their asses off to basically really exploit the opportunity as much as they can. It's not like people growing up going to school in Shenzhen and then getting a factory job, or in Shanghai or in Hangzhou. It's usually people coming from these rural areas who are only there temporarily, in the same way that you might go off to university in America and be somewhere for 4 years. You go off to Shenzhen for 4 years and make as many overtime hours as possible, because what you can earn in a year might support you and your family in a village for 5 to 10 years. And so there's a sense in which when you are there, you are trying to work as hard as possible. And Apple's just able to sort of take advantage of that more than anybody else.